Nobody expected what happened when she agreed to marry, and it changed everything. The sun rose pale and harsh over the dust-choked town of Dry Creek, painting every wooden plank and corrugated rooftop in muted gold. Martha tightened the worn straps of her dress, feeling the coarse fabric bite against her skin as she stepped off the creaking wagon. The frontier had a reputation: unforgiving, ruthless, and filled with men who survived by their own rules. But she had never truly understood what that meant until now. Families whispered about marriages arranged not for love, but for survival, and she had come here to witness it firsthand. The law offered no protection, only a tenuous set of agreements written on brittle paper that might as well have been wishes. Her father's desperate letter had arrived just days before, detailing the impossible choices left to women in the Western Territories. The towns were drying up, crops failing, men leaving for gold or lawless pursuits. Without marriage, a woman could starve, or worse, be forced into labor, traveling across territories where no one knew her name. She felt the weight of generations pressing down on her shoulders as she walked into the dusty street, every step echoing with unspoken danger. A rugged man leaned against the saloon's doorway, tipping his worn hat in her direction, his eyes sharp, scanning, calculating. He wasn't smiling. There was no friendliness here. Smiles were currency, and currency was scarce. Martha's heart raced, not from attraction, but from the subtle understanding that he was likely one of the few men in town who could grant her survival through marriage. The townsfolk kept their distance, muttering under their breath, measuring her in seconds. She knew her appearance was part of the negotiation. A young woman, capable yet fragile, alone in a world designed to grind people into dust. She looked away from the man, trying to appear composed, her mind racing with strategy. Should she engage, negotiate, pretend disinterest? Every step was a gamble, every glance a silent conversation. The frontier demanded constant awareness, and mistakes could be fatal. As she approached the rough-hewn saloon, the smell of smoke, stale whiskey, and dust filled her nostrils. Inside, men played cards, their faces hardened, muscles taut from years of labor and lawlessness. She was invisible and exposed at the same time, a paradox that made her chest tighten. The man from the doorway followed her with a careful, unblinking gaze. Martha realized she would have to read him, understand his unspoken rules, if she hoped to navigate this town and survive. The frontier's first lesson had been learned. Trust was not freely given. It was a weapon. The first moments in Dry Creek made it clear that her life would now be measured in choices dictated by survival, not desire. And yet, beneath the fear, curiosity flickered. What would it take to carve her place here? How far would she go? And would anyone be who they appeared to be? Inside the dimly lit cabin that had been offered to her, Martha's hands trembled slightly as she unfolded the brittle, yellowed papers on the table. Marriage contracts in Dry Creek weren't ceremonial. They were practical, transactional, and binding. The rugged man she had glimpsed on the street, Thomas, entered quietly, the floorboards groaning under his boots. His expression remained unreadable, a mask shaped by years surviving in a lawless land. "This is how it works," he said, voice low, carrying the weight of authority and expectation. He gestured to the document. "Sign, and you survive. Refuse, and—" He let the sentence hang, leaving the threat unspoken but palpable. Martha's heart thumped. She knew he was right. Her father had warned her of this. Survival often came wrapped in compromise. As she took the pen, the candlelight flickering across the table, Martha considered her options. This was not love. Love here was fragile, easily broken by hunger, violence, or greed. Yet signing this paper meant safety, a roof, and a fighting chance. The weight of generations pressed on her. Survival had always demanded sacrifice, and she was about to become another link in a long chain of women navigating a harsh world. Thomas watched silently, his gaze lingering not on her features, but her posture, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the nervous bite of her lip. Every gesture, every micro-expression was a test, a silent negotiation of power. By the time she signed, Martha felt both relief and an odd pang of unease. Her life was secured, but at what emotional cost? That night, as the candle flickered low and shadows danced along the cabin walls, she studied Thomas in quiet observation. His presence was commanding, yet restrained, a blend of authority and silence. They shared the same space, but remained worlds apart, each calculating, measuring, and adapting. Survival didn't require conversation. It required understanding unspoken rules, reading subtle signals, and holding oneself with composure. As Martha lay awake, listening to the crackle of the fire, she wondered if the frontier allowed room for anything beyond survival. Could a heart awaken under such constraints? Or was it destined to remain caged, locked behind fear and necessity? The questions gnawed at her as sleep evaded her. In the land of lawlessness, trust and desire were intertwined with danger, and every action had consequences far beyond what one could see. By dawn, she knew the town had already begun testing her, probing for weaknesses, measuring resilience. Marriage had granted her safety, but the frontier had not yet yielded its full trials. The lessons had just begun, and every day promised to teach her how survival and morality collided in brutal, often heartbreaking ways. The sun dipped low over Dry Creek, casting long, jagged shadows across the wooden sidewalks. Martha and Thomas moved through the town side by side, deliberately avoiding face-to-face contact. Every passerby's glance reminded her of the invisible rules she had just begun to understand. Survival required observation, restraint, and calculation. Emotions could be fatal if revealed too early. She noticed how Thomas's eyes flickered to danger before she did, how his posture adjusted subtly to shield her without ever making the gesture obvious. In the quiet moments between survival duties, curiosity bloomed. What kind of man could command respect in such a lawless town, yet remain unreadable? Martha found herself studying him, tracing the hard lines of his face, the way he carried himself, all while convincing herself that survival, not attraction, was her priority. A tense moment arrived when a group of rowdy men blocked their path, voices rough and threatening. Martha froze, but Thomas moved with precision, blocking the path with calculated authority, his gaze sharp, unyielding. The men hesitated, then backed off, murmuring under their breaths. Martha's pulse raced, not from fear, but from awe at the quiet control he wielded. In the frontier, respect was earned silently, through observation and action. That evening, as the sun faded and the town settled into uneasy calm, Martha sat by the fire, stitching a tear in her dress. Thomas remained standing, facing the door, vigilant. Their silence was heavy but not oppressive. It was an unspoken agreement that survival required patience, observation, and restraint. The slow burn of unacknowledged tension hung in the air, curiosity blending with the necessity of life in this harsh land. Evening shadows stretched long, and Martha found herself thinking about the precarious balance of power, danger, and emotion. Each glance, each subtle gesture carried meaning. Could the frontier allow a spark of something forbidden, or was it destined to crush hearts under the weight of survival? Her curiosity grew sharper, more insistent, drawing her into a silent, high-stakes dance where understanding could mean safety or disaster. Night fell like a blanket of smoke over Dry Creek. Martha and Thomas stood on the porch of their small cabin, the town quiet but alive with invisible currents of danger and gossip. The frontier had tested them, measured their resilience, and observed their compliance. Every choice carried consequences, and every action whispered of survival and morality. A knock at the door shattered the fragile calm. A messenger delivered news that the neighboring town had been attacked, families wiped out, and widows forced to flee. Martha felt the chilling weight of reality settle in. Her own survival was a thread in a tapestry of desperation, manipulation, and harsh justice. Thomas's gaze shifted toward her, and for a fleeting second, she caught an emotion that startled her. Concern, perhaps, or respect, but quickly masked again by the frontier's unyielding rules. No words were exchanged. They understood each other through shared experience, silent observation, and mutual recognition of the stakes. Survival demanded restraint, trust, and a constant awareness of danger. The fire crackled between them, casting flickering light on their faces. Martha realized that love, if it existed here, would be cautious, hidden, and dangerous. Emotions could not dictate actions. Decisions had to be tactical. Yet the human heart persisted, seeking connection even under the shadow of hardship. As dawn approached, Martha prepared for another day, in a world where choices were never purely her own. The frontier had shown her that survival often required compromise, courage, and vigilance, but it had also revealed that curiosity, subtle trust, and observation could carve small spaces of humanity into the harshest landscapes. She and Thomas remained side by side, not lovers, not enemies, but allies in a town that demanded every ounce of attention, courage, and cunning. The wind whispered through the empty streets, carrying stories of women who had survived by courage and compromise, of men who tested morality and strength alike, and of a land that took everything yet demanded more. In Dry Creek, the line between life and death, trust and betrayal, survival and love, was razor thin, and each day brought the choice anew.